Everyone loves a good ghost story. The horror and mystery of it all make your heart race and maybe even give you goosebumps, right? But have you ever thought about how some of these stories might not be made up? What if an actual person went through the experience but lived to tell the tale? The unlucky stop. About 5 years ago, my mom was driving across the country along with my sister and me. Even though it was late, we were still pretty rested and awake. We pulled over at the first rest area in 200 miles as we were traveling along a highway and realized we needed gas and a break. Besides a van full of teens on a road trip, there were just 2 young men standing still outside of a little gray automobile that was parked in front of us at the gas station's pump. When we got to the station, everything just seemed off. We had been traveling for days and had passed by many rest spots at night without once feeling threatened. I stayed in the car while my mother and sister went inside. The teenagers fled quickly after claiming to be frightened and unable to get the pump to function. The 2 guys had not moved at all the whole time. Yup, not even an inch. They were not even talking, which made me feel even more uncomfortable. They weren't even using their phones. Motionless, simply standing there in the middle of the night. All of a sudden, as my mom and sister made their way back to the car, the 2 men turned to stare at us slowly without moving or turning the rest of their bodies, and I swear to God, we all noticed the same thing. They had the most horrifying pitch black eyes. They were completely hollow. There was simply a nothingness in them. We drove off as quickly as possible and didn't stop till we reached the next city. But you know what the worst part of the entire experience was? Any map we looked at didn't show the location. We knew exactly where to look on the highway, but neither Google Maps nor any of our printed maps could help us locate it. Even when we later asked the locals about the eerie petrol station that was off to the side of the road, we just got blank stares in return. Since then, we have driven on the same interstate many times, but there simply isn't a rest area. An old friend. I attended my high school reunion when I was 37 years old. I took a flight to the closest airport and decided to rent a car. It took about 35 miles to get there, through an area of the country that was rural and really deserted. I noticed someone flagging me down on the side of the road about 3 miles outside of town. It turned out to be one of the guys from my former school. Let's call him John. He enters the vehicle, and we immediately begin chatting, talking about the good old days. He looked pretty much the same, just a little bit older, even though it had been 20 years since I last saw him. As soon as we arrive in town, I invite him to a bar nearby for a drink. "No, just take me home," he replies. I turned in the direction of where John's parents had once lived, just a few blocks away from my grandmother's home. But he instructed me to take him outside of town instead. There was a park of mobile homes there, so I assumed that was where he lived. He then says, "Please drop me here. Once again, it was great to see you," and then walks right into the night. Weird, I thought. But hey, people change, right? Anyway, I go to the reunion and begin chatting with some of my former classmates. We begin talking about who's coming to the reunion, so I casually mention how I just saw John and dropped him on the outskirts of town. Suddenly, everyone goes quiet. Even the karaoke singer stops and puts down the microphone. My friend turns towards me, white as a sheet of paper. "Dude, John passed away 8 years ago on that bend. Was driving like a maniac and crashed his car. All of us attended his burial. What the hell?" I stepped outside to the car to take a few deep breaths when I started to feel quite lightheaded. The local newspaper with John's obituary from 8 years ago is sitting on my sofa as I type this. Every time I think about the events of that day, my hearts start racing, and I just can't seem to wrap my head around what happened. The kids and the wall. My parents relocated our family to a different area when I was 3 years old. The house was lovely, although a little dated. Since the neighborhood was an old 1950s area, it was home to a somewhat diverse population. My dad began noticing strange things about me as soon as we arrived at the new home. He would hear me laughing and giggling in my room, and when he asked what was so funny, I'd tell him the kids were cracking jokes. He would also find me curled up in the closet when he came in to wake me up. This happened over and over again, but my parents didn't take it too seriously because I was a pretty imaginative kid. They were particularly irritated by the fact that I always refused to leave the house from the front door. Until one of my parents brought me into and out of the house, I would scream, yell, and weep. When you entered the front door, there was a low brick wall separating it from the living room to the left and a closet to the right. It was merely a room divider that was about 4 feet high and 3 feet long, but I never wanted to touch or be close to it. My dad began making improvements to the house after we had been there for a while. One of them involved tearing down the wall. In order to avoid having my brother and me on their way, my parents dropped us off with our grandparents on the scheduled day. We got back a week later and learned that my father had called the cops as soon as he tore down the wall. He had found bones found inside the brick wall, and they turned out to belong to a few dozen children. The police were never able to identify who put them there. The graveyard resident. A couple of years ago, my friend and I were driving around a huge graveyard. What can I say? We'd run out of things to do. After a while, we stopped the car, started walking around, and came across a small pond. On the opposite side of the pond, someone was perched on a rock. The figure was completely dark, and the only distinguishable thing was that it appeared to be a man wearing an antique top hat. Stupidly, we waved and said, "Hello." He continued to remain motionless on the rock without making any eye contact. All of a sudden, he leaped to his feet, began to speed toward us on the water, and then disappeared into the water halfway across the pond. I let out a deafening scream, and the two of us hurried back to the car. But the car just wouldn't start, no matter what we tried. We were at it for a while when we started hearing someone banging on it. It was dark as hell outside, so we couldn't see who was doing this. The banging stopped, but over the next half an hour, we would hear it again every few seconds. I picked up my phone and tried to call my mom to come to help us out, but there was no service. My friend tried the same thing, but it was the same for her. We kept trying to start the car and get the hell out of this place, but nothing. After a while, the banging stopped, but we could feel this intense pressure all around us. A few moments later, the car finally started, and my friend sped out of there so fast it felt like a second. As soon as we got out of the graveyard, our phone started showing a signal again. I don't know what happened that night, but I know for sure that what we saw wasn't an animal or a human. Which one of these stories scared you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thanks for watching. See you soon.